Hello everyone, welcome back to Throttle Grotto. This week I'm going to show you how to put all of the accessories on the Porsche 928 engine, if you have a 4.5, and also how to do the Camaro V6, Delco 130, whatever you want to call it, alternator swap that I learned about on Rennlist. So stay tuned. Alright everybody, I'm going to consider myself extremely fortunate in the fact that I went through all my boxes of parts and found all of the brackets I needed to install everything on the 928 engine. And by everything, I mean power steering, air conditioning, and alternator. And I didn't see a lot of information out there about how these things attach, so I figured I'd make a quick video and just show you guys how these all mount to the car. So let's go take a look. All right, so I figured I'd start with the AC pump since that's a pretty easy one to get to. So here is your bracket. It's like a U-shaped bracket that mounts to the block, and then there's some long bolts, 17mm bolts that go through each one of those ears, one from the front, one from the back. Then you have your two connections, your connection here and your connection here for your lines that go do magic cold things, and of course wiring, which on this one is broken. And then you have this ear here on the front of the engine with a bracket that wraps around underneath so that you can bolt the bottom ear to that bracket. So on the other side of the engine, you have your power steering pump here. You have, this is your bolt that does the tensioning. This does the tensioning of the pump. And then you have two bolts here that attach it to this bracket that attaches behind the oil fill, or this fill tube here. So that bracket just attaches there and then kind of kicks out so that the power steering pump bracket bolts to that. And then there's two bolts through the front of the power steering pump through the bracket to the front of the power steering pump. And then on the back side, you might not be able to see, so that bracket right there around the back, it's got a lug there, and there's a long bolt that goes through the back of that into the back of the power steering pump. So that's kind of what it looks like from the back. The big long 13mm head, an I want to say it's an M6 or I can't remember, M8 I think. Anyway, so that's how that whole assembly looks, not mounted to the car. A 928 alternator looks like. It's got this big flat fan on the front. You'll have I had to take the pulley off of this one to use it for the other one, but you have an alternator pulley there, and then all your connections here on the back. So you can see that one's labeled D. That one's for the battery. Yeah, the positive side. And then these here are where a shroud goes that wraps around the side of it to help cool the alternator. We're not going to use that because we're using the Camaro. Alright, so now when it comes to the alternator, kind of show you what I've got going on here. I have a 10x875 belt. I'm not sure if that's the stock one. That's the one the previous owner labeled with alternator. And it actually seems to fit. So it may work for your application, it may not. But as far as attaching the alternator to the car, used a couple of these guys here to make some spacers. I used, this is, what I believe is an air pump adjuster screw with a bolt right through it, tapped right into the alternator. So I put a nut on the back side of it just as a precaution, and I double nutted the adjuster here and then just cut it off. And then on the top I used the stock alternator bolt, which threads in right there, and it's super long. And then I just taped a washer to the back side of the alternator to put it in, so that when because I just needed a little bit of spacing on the back side there to hold the alternator out so that I get the line with the belt just right. And you can see here I'm clearing this bolt, which is nice, or clearing the alternator bolt. So aside from this kind of janky looking old belt here, which I just kind of used as a test fit, yeah, the Camaro V6 install is complete, with the exception of these guys here. The stock, or the big lug on the back, takes the wire from the starter and the battery, which I think that's how those are wired. And then this guy here is the exciter wire, which runs up to the 14-pin connector, and it's going to hook to L on here, which I believe is this guy, and then the other two ones are not used on this plug. So on the back side of the alternator, you're going to need one of these. It's an adapter plug. This one is the, see if I can, the Dorman 85854. So I'm really happy with how easy this install went to put this alternator in. All right, so there you have it. That's kind of where all of the accessories hang on a 928, like a 4.5 or 4.7 liter engine. I made this video because I had to go hunting for all this information, and I was hoping to give you guys just a one-stop shop so you can kind of look and see with a video where all these pieces and parts are supposed to land. So hopefully this helps you if you're trying to put a 928 together that came in pieces like mine did, and they don't have any reference on where things go. So there you go. And if you're thinking about the Camaro swap, that's how it looks in the car. So that's all I have for today. Until next time, get out there and work on something.